defeated, the left-wing policies were defeated in the last election, but that hasn't stopped them. And if Mamdani is elected, that'll embolden them further. There is a rift within the party. There are a few Democrats like Tom Suozzi and Josh Gottheimer who were in the Congress. I worked with Josh in the Clinton White House. They have spoken out against Mamdani, and they do fear what's going to happen if he does get elected. So that is a real concern. So there is a schism underway, and I think his election will exacerbate that.
Today is the last day of campaigning for the New York mayoral candidates, with polls opening tomorrow morning. President Trump's weighed in and warned that he may reduce funding for New York if the Democratic nominee, Zohran Mamdani, who is currently the front runner, wins the election.
It's going to be hard for me as the president to give a lot of money to New York because if you have a communist running New York, all you're doing is wasting the money you're sending there. So I don't know that he's won, and I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all the time, to be honest with you.
Well, Mandani has previously been criticised by his rival candidate, Andrew Cuomo, for his lack of experience.
He has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yes.
Well, that was Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic candidate and front runner. Let's talk to Jim Kennedy, who's a Democratic strategist and a former advisor to Bill Cliinton. Good evening to you, Jim.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
Now, I know there's been quite a buzz about Zohran Mamdani. He's pretty left-wing. He's pretty young. Why do you think he has put himself in the position where he's very much the front runner to win this election when voters go to the polls tomorrow?
Well, he is a talented campaigner. He does great videos. He appeals to young people. Young people don't have a negative association with socialism that older voters do. So he's kind of riding a tide of popularity in that regard. However, I think his election would be bad for New Yorkers and bad for the Democratic Party nationally.
Why do you say that?
Because I think he'll become a poster child for Democrats. Republicans will label him, their opponents, Mamdani Democrats, the way they did with McGovern Democrats in the 70s. And they'll say that he stands for more crime, more communism, and more costs. And so I think his policies, his socialist policies, would really fail New Yorkers, and that would be translated to the national scene in the midterm elections next year and possibly in 2028 as well.
I mean, this is being seen as a really important contest. The Democrats have, as I'm sure you would perhaps acknowledge, since the last presidential election, been really struggling to galvanize themselves and unite around a single message. Is the risk here that the Democrats decide that, well, maybe they've got to move further left, as Zohran Mamdani appears to be suggesting?
That is a problem. The Democrats do have an identity crisis underway. They certainly were defeated. The left-wing policies were defeated in the last election, but that hasn't stopped them. And if Mamdani is elected, that'll embolden them further. There is a rift within the party. There are a few Democrats like Tom Suozzi and Josh Gottheimer who were in the Congress. I worked with Josh in the Clinton White House. They have spoken out against Mamdani, and they do fear what's going to happen if he does get elected. So that is a real concern. So there is a schism underway, and I think his election will exacerbate that.
He has, of course, come up with some pretty eye-catching proposals. He's said he's going to freeze rents on rent-stabilised apartments. He's going to provide universal childcare, free buses, city-owned grocery stores. I mean, there are many people in New York struggling to make ends meet. That's a pretty attractive message, isn't it?
Well, it may be attractive in words, but it's not going to be attractive in reality. He'll transform New York into Havana on the Hudson because we've seen what's happened in places like Cuba. Even China, which obviously was a communist country, they really turned to free enterprise beginning in the 90s, and they actually helped elevate many millions of people out of poverty because they went from socialism towards free enterprise. Now they still have a strict control over the politics in that country, but free enterprise really is the answer to human aspiration and human success and prosperity, not socialism. The best thing to happen if Mamdani is elected is if he fails at implementing those policies.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that he does appear to be on course for victory. I mean, I wonder whether that's partly because when you look at his opponents, I mean, he's up against Andrew Cuomo, who was a Democrat New York governor, but had to resign over this big scandal over the sexual harassment allegations, and Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, who's probably unlikely ever to win over such a strongly Democratic city as New York.
Yeah, it's an unusual race. I do think Cuomo has an outside chance to win. I used to work for Joe Lieberman. He ran as an independent against a Republican and a Democrat in Connecticut, and he actually succeeded because he appealed to a combination of Democrats and Republicans and independents. Cuomo's going to have to pull that off if he does succeed. So it's a really unusual race. And New York has an unusual electorate. Doesn't really represent America, even though it's the biggest and most important city in America. It's going to be interesting to watch. I think Mandani is the odds-on favorite, but there has been a lot of early voting happening, and that could cut both ways. A lot of younger voters are coming out. That probably helps Mamdani. On the other hand, a lot of voters from maybe Staten Island or the Queens, older voters, they may come out and support Cuomo. So we're going to see how that cuts tomorrow.
And I'm hearing that Elon Musk has actually endorsed Andrew Cuomo. That's pretty unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, you do have both what Donald Trump said and now Elon Musk. I think they fear what's going to happen in New York if Mamdani is elected. Although, again, I think Republicans will benefit politically if he does get elected. So this is a very, very cross-cutting election and very unusual one. You also have Eric Adams, who's the incumbent, who's not running again, but he's supporting Cuomo. Other Democrats have kind of sat out the election. A few of them have endorsed Mamdani. So that represents the schism that's happening in American politics.
Interesting, though, the way that Mamdani has already excited a lot of attention from many other left-wing leaders from right across Europe, including Jeremy Corbyn, who's a former leader of the Labour Party here in the UK. He's actually been out there apparently helping to bash the phones for Mamdani.
Yeah, I think Zohran Mamdani is the Jeremy Corbyn of American politics. And I fear that he's going to do to the Democratic Party what Corbyn did to the Labour Party in the UK. It's not surprising that they're for each other. There is a consistency among socialists, but they're consistently wrong when it comes to reality. But they're consistent in their views of free enterprise and human behavior. And so it's not surprising that that's happened, even though I understand Corbyn was against Trump coming out for Boris Johnson. So that's hypocritical, certainly, on his part.
If he does win, though, will it not, nonetheless, just cheer up the Democrats a bit? I mean, they've had a pretty tough ride since the last election, haven't they?
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out next year in the midterms. The Democrats, again, have had a real tough slide over the last couple of years. They need to find a way to appeal to younger voters, but also retain their appeal to centrist voters or even some moderate Republicans. That's the winning combination that Bill Cliinton was able to achieve, as well as Barack Obama. You need to put together a coalition. Unfortunately, you can't have a coalition only on the left, which I think is what Kamala Harris did, basically, and I think what Mandani is doing in New York. A coalition really has to be broad-based and appeal across ideology and not be wedded to one ideology.
Jim Kennedy, Democratic strategist, former advisor to Bill Cliinton. Really good to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I appreciate it.